If you're wondering how to move to Bali in 2021, this video will tell you everything you need to know. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you are all doing well. So if you've been keeping up with our recent uploads, you will know that at the end of last month, my boyfriend and I moved to Indonesia. Since we moved here, we've had so many DMs on Instagram asking how we got here, what we're even doing here, and most commonly asked, how much did it cost us? A lot of people were asking the same question, so I thought I'd do a Q&A video and kind of answer the most popular ones and hopefully help anybody that's wanting to move to Bali in the future or anybody that's just curious. As I said, a lot of the questions were repeated, so I've kind of generalised them and split them into 4 sections. How we got here, money and finances, our travel plans, and also other miscellaneous questions that I didn't really know which section to put those in. Unless you've been living under a rock, but even then I think you would know, coronavirus has pretty much stopped the world and travel for the past year or so, and it's made traveling so difficult. So a lot of the questions were asking how we even managed to get here when traveling out of the UK is illegal at the moment. So we applied for B211A business visas, which gives us a legally permitted reason to enter Indonesia and also a legally permitted reason to leave the UK. We applied through the company BaliVisas.com, and the cost of the visa was 7,750,000 IDR, which roughly translates to about £385. We applied for our visas through their website, so we just had to send a photocopy of our passports and also a print of a bank statement proving that we had at least a minimum of $1,500 in our accounts, and that was it. That was the only thing we had to send to apply. Once the Indonesian immigration reopened again, we had our visas issued and emailed to us within a few days, but the rules and regulations for immigration are constantly changing, so that is something you need to keep an eye on. The visa we have allows us to stay in Indonesia for up to 30 days, but you can pay to extend it up to 6 months, which is what we're planning on doing. Another visa company I found, which was after we already applied for our visas, was Let's Move Indonesia. They're cheaper than what we paid, and their Instagram is really good for updates, for posting update announcements from the immigration. So if you are looking to come, that's a really good Instagram account to follow because they are on the ball with posting any announcements or anything like that. I haven't personally used them, so I can't fully recommend them, but we have drove past their office here in Seminyak and they do seem legit, so obviously it's at your own risk if you want to apply with them, but they do look really good. We then flew from the UK via Abu Dhabi to Jakarta, and we flew with Etihad Airlines. I can't remember exactly how much we paid for the flights. It was a one-way flight, but I'll put it on the screen. The price. We had to fill out a declaration to leave the UK form, which you can get off the government website. You do get fined if you don't have one filled in. We just got asked if we had filled it, which we said yes, and then they never actually asked to see it, so I'm not sure how strict they are on that, but it's better to be safe than sorry, and you do need to make sure it's filled in. We weren't asked our reasons for travel either. One of the questions was, did we have to say it was for work? They never actually asked us. They asked to see our visas, which I think was just enough proof for us to be going. And before we could check in, we had to show the QR code to prove that we'd filled out the EHACs, which is kind of like an Indonesian online health card that basically just says you don't have coronavirus. We also had to have a PCR test up to 72 hours before we flew. We booked ours with a company called Dam Health. I know they have a few like offices or locations, what do you even call them, like testing sites across the UK, and we paid £119, but I think the price has gone down since we paid for ours. You do need to make sure it's with a legit company because there was a guy in the queue behind us waiting to check in, and I don't think his was, so the flight attendant was calling the company just to confirm and make sure, whereas ours just had a QR code they could scan to prove that it was real. So quarantine is mandatory if you're arriving in Indonesia at the moment, and you can only arrive internationally into Jakarta. You can't fly to Bali, so don't book a flight there because it will be cancelled. The quarantine is 5 nights at the moment, but that could change, so again, just keep an eye on the updates. We booked to stay at the Novotel Hotel, which we booked at Jakarta Airport because our original accommodation emailed us whilst we were about to get on our flight from Abu Dhabi to cancel, so that was great. But there's no need to panic if you haven't already booked. Once you're through security and immigration and you've got your bags and everything at the airport, there's loads of stalls of hotels that are just waiting for you to book there, so you can just book at the airport. Ours cost £300 per person, which was for a couple sharing a suite room, which also included the transfer from the airport to the hotel, 3 meals a day, and also 2 PCR tests, which you're required to have before you can check out of the hotel, providing the negative. The hotel was good for its purpose. We only needed to be there to quarantine. They were efficient with the PCR testing and everything. It wasn't the cleanest of rooms, and it was a smoking room, which we don't smoke, so the smell was it wasn't great, but the Wi-Fi and everything was good. It was still a nice room, so I can recommend it for the price. So on to money. The majority of the questions I got asked were about money. There were a lot of questions asking how much we saved, how we managed to save, if we're going to be working here, how we're getting an income. We're not going to be working whilst we're here. We don't have a working employment visa anyway, so it would be illegal for us to work, but we're just going to use our savings and enjoy our time here. We were originally meant to be going travelling October of last year, which got cancelled, and we've been planning that since kind of mid 2019, which is when we knew we wanted to go travelling and when we started saving. So we have been saving for quite a while, and it's so cheap once you get here that you don't need to work. I'm not sure, I don't even know how you would go about finding work here, so that is something you could look into if you're interested in that, but we're just purely travelling. How much we've personally saved doesn't really matter, because once you've worked out your monthly budget, then you can just figure out how many months you want to come for or how many months you can afford to come for. We researched a lot into the budget before we came. Watching YouTube videos was the best way to do that for me personally, and we figured we'd spend around £500 per person per month, which includes absolutely everything. So that's accommodation, transport, food, drinks, excursions, everything. We've been here around 3 weeks now, almost 3 weeks, and we are sticking to that budget, so you can kind of use that as a guide to see how many months you would want to come for. It also depends how you want to travel. We don't mind staying in the cheaper places. The place we're in at the minute cost us like £3 each per night, and we will be staying in hostels, and Airbnb is a really good place to look at, especially if you come in for a long period of time. If you look at booking somewhere long term, often they give you like a monthly discount, which is what we got here as well, so it worked out even cheaper. Another thing that came up as well was people asking for savings tips. I am probably the worst person to ask for savings tips. I'm such a bad saver. Ellis would be probably better at answering this one, but I think once you know what you're saving for, and if you want it enough, then you will just save. I was self-employed last year, and obviously that wasn't great through coronavirus. I couldn't work, I had no income, so I had no savings. So I just found a temporary job that I could work at for 5 or 6 months before we came, and I literally just saved the majority of my wage. We didn't really go out and do anything, not that we could anyway, because everything was shut, so that kind of helped. But I just saved as much as I could, and it's all worth it once you get here. I also got a lot of questions about our travel plans. So as I mentioned about the visas, we're going to be staying in Bali for 6 months, and then after that we're hoping to go to Southeast Asia. We really want to travel Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Sri Lanka. The list is literally endless, but that all depends on COVID restrictions and travel restrictions, and we can't really plan for the future now because so many things could change by then. So if we can't go to anywhere else in Southeast Asia from here, we can actually apply for an onshore social visa in Bali, which means we can stay longer than the 6 months. So we could kind of do that until we can go somewhere else. In the meantime, as I said, we're going to be traveling around Bali, so we've got around 2 weeks left in the kind of Seminyak, Canggu area we're in at the moment, and then from there we're wanting to move down to Uluwatu. We want to go do the Nusa Islands, Gili Islands, go to Lombok. There's a lot of places there we want to go. We also want to spend more time in Ubud, and we also want to go up north and see the dolphins and like the proper black sand beaches. So there's so much for us to do whilst we're here, which is really exciting, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see the vlogs. Another question was, how long have we been planning this trip for? As I said, we were meant to start travelling in October of last year, but we were actually meant to go to Australia and then do Southeast Asia afterwards. So we spent a long time planning that, and once that got cancelled, we kind of looked at our options and realised we could apply for visas for Bali. So I think it was around January time we started planning for Bali. We kind of figured out our rough route that we want to do, and we know places we want to go and things we want to do, but we haven't actually booked it. So the place we're in at the moment, we've got around 2 weeks left, and then from there we haven't got anything booked. We're just kind of taking it as it comes. So it's a very loose plan of what we want to do, but I think that's the best way sometimes, because we don't want to limit ourselves and book 1 week here and 1 week there and get to the first place and want to actually stay 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even longer. So it is very exciting. So lastly, a few general questions that I didn't really know where to put them. One was how to find cheap hotels. I mentioned this earlier. If you go on Airbnb, you can get the monthly discounts. Airbnbs are actually really cheap in Bali as well. Out of everywhere we looked, Bali seems to have the cheapest Airbnbs, so that's definitely a place to look. Hostel World is really good for looking at hostels too. We've seen some of them that are like £1 a night in Ubud, so they are crazy cheap, but they're also not necessarily the luxury that you get of having a villa. So that depends on your budget too. I know people that can get full private villas with a pool and a cleaner and a gardener and everything for like £800 a month, but that is obviously nearly our whole budget. So we don't mind staying in homestays and shared accommodation because it brings the price down, which means we can travel for longer. Another question was it scary leaving your jobs to travel? For me, no. I hated my job. It wasn't the best. I didn't hate it, it was just, it got me by, but I was so excited to leave my job, I couldn't wait. So for me, I was counting down the days till leaving. Ellis's job is kind of different because he started his apprenticeship and he's been there years, and they've actually given him, I think it's a sabbatical, I don't know if that's the right word, but they're basically letting him come travelling for a year and then he can go back to his job if he wants to. They're kind of keeping it open for him, so that's really good for him too. Another question was useful apps to have whilst you're in Bali. So the three that we found most useful are Gojek, Grab, and also, I can just see Ellis being attacked by what was that? A big bee outside. The most useful apps we found are Grab, Gojek and Bluebird, which we haven't really used that much. So Grab and Gojek are kind of like Uber Eats, but also Uber. So you can book taxis, you can get food delivered, you can get shopping delivered, you can order like massages to your accommodation, so you can literally get everything on those. So they're really useful to have. Google Maps as well, or Maps on your iPhone, is really good because like when we were going to the waterfall we didn't have a clue where we were going, so that's really helpful to get around. Bluebird is another taxi app, but we haven't really used that, we haven't seen many. A lot of them around here are Gojek and Grab. Bluebird we used more in Jakarta. Another question was, do you miss England? Not at the moment. I feel like we're still kind of in that holiday phase, like we feel like we're just on holiday still. To say we're so far across the world in a completely different like culture, different place, I still don't feel like I'm that far from home. It is quite westernized. There's a lot of like cafes and restaurants that do Western food, so you don't feel like you're completely out of your depth. But yeah, not missing England so far. One of the questions was from my mum asking if I missed her. I do miss my family, but I feel like we've got to do this whilst we can, so we're just enjoying it at the minute. And I think that's all the questions answered. If there's any others that you have, please let me know in the comments and I will reply to all the comments down below. If there's anything else you want to know or anything you didn't think of that you're curious about, feel free to DM me on Instagram and I will reply to that too. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe for lots more travel vlogs that will be coming soon. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.